What I want to encourage girls is to notice those patterns because we can start working through them. So much of what I just said, people are doing very, very subconsciously. I was not aware of this behavior inside of me until years and years and years later. So I'm just planting seeds here for us to become familiar with our patterns. It's not about changing the circumstance. It's not about changing the friend. And it's not either about turning the friend into the devil because she keeps hurting me. She's not doing anything wrong. She's just being her. I'm just being me. But my anxious attachment style puts so much weight on our relationship that when she doesn't respond to my text for 2 hours, the pain and the fear and the worry that maybe she doesn't love me anymore. Maybe I'm just too much. Am I too much? It's a lot to hold. So become aware of these patterns because these patterns could be healed.
Hey, I'm Esther, and you are listening to On Your Own, the podcast for Jewish girls living away from home. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you confidently navigate life on your own so you can achieve real growth and independence and take ownership of this foundational stage of your life. For additional resources, tips, and to stay up to date on future episodes, sign up for the On Your Own newsletter, linked below in the description. Looking forward to spending some time with you today. And now, to this week's episode. Welcome, Tzivie, to the podcast. We're so excited to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
You can start by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
So I live in Vancouver, Washington. My husband and I run a Chabad here. My kids are very much a part of it. Actually, my daughter was just here in the summer running our camp with us.
Oh, that's amazing.
For us. I don't even know with. I was like the grandmother. She was the one raising the kids. So we run it's a smaller town. So it's a small town Chabad, kind of like a bunch of stuff going on. Recently, I got very passionate about, I guess I call it healing, but it's also, tshuva. I like to call it that as well. It's just realigning with our truth. And I did a training in Internal Family Systems, and it felt so aligned with so much of what I was learning about in Chassidus, about the human psyche, learning in Tanya about the human psyche, and also so much of the Alter Rebbe's Maimarim, so much of what the Rebbe speaks about. It just really aligned, and I got really passionate about it. So I did training. I do see clients today, but also I feel really passionate about sharing how it's all one and the same. Like it's not two separate things. It's not like we heal ourselves or we go for therapy and then we also live a frum Hasidic life or just a frum life, however. So to me, it's one and the same. It's all one and the same. It's the healing of our animal consciousness. And like in the Rebbe's introduction, in Basi Lagani, he shared that this is why we're here. We're here to make a dira b'tachtainim and to turn the world into a place where Hashem is where divine reality is obvious, and to elevate our survival instincts, our animal consciousness, our nefesh habahamis. And so in my own experience, it's been a huge transformation internally for me, and I'm passionate about sharing that with others. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to get into this. I wanted to start by touching on this word healing, because I've heard it a lot. And a lot more recently, I feel like it's becoming more of like a accepted concept and term. But there's still part of me that when I hear healing, I think of like these shamans or like witch doctors or something.
I get it.
Woo-hoo. And so I wanted to hear from you first and foremost, what is healing? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, so let's speak to your perception first, because that is life in general. We perceive it through the lenses that we're wearing. And if I have a preconceived notion about a certain word, then I need to be 100% honest with myself. The word doesn't mean what I think it means. The word is, the way I'm interpreting it is through my lens and my perception. So if we could strip that word from any of your preconceived narratives about it and just use the word healing. Okay, the definition of healing means that I'm not perfectly healthy. I'm not an expression of my absolute truth. I'm laying in bed because I am not feeling well, or I am acting my survival instincts and therefore my ego is driving my car. And my goal is to heal and bring myself back into alignment so I can be an expression of my truth. Or my goal is to heal so I can get out of bed and go show up to life and to all my responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, healing is the process of tshuva, which means returning to our core, which is to live a life as an expression of my godly soul, rather than as an expression of all my fears and my anxieties and my desires to feel better or to be perceived by others in a certain way. That's what healing is. Healing is to be me. Like I have a strong core, and I'm an expression of that. And from the Jewish perspective, that strong core is our nefesh elokis, our godly soul, our higher consciousness. So to be living a life as an expression of that rather than driven by survival instincts.
Because when you hear healing, even I think in this context as well, it's almost like there's a fixing. There's like a brokenness before a fixing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so can we both agree that when I'm not living as my best self, there's something that's a little bit flawed, something's off the mark, something's not okay. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It doesn't mean there's something wrong or shameful about it. It means I'm human. And the very nature of my humanness is that I have it's the first soul that we get. The Alter Rebbe describes this as we have our nefesh habahamis, and he describes it and he outlines it, and then he comes and says, "V'nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael." The second soul is our higher consciousness, is our godly soul.
Wow.
So it makes so much sense that our humanness is a big driver, is my loudest part. And I could go about my whole life living through those human lenses, but it's called a nefesh habahamis because it's much like an animal. Its instinct is survival. It's survival. I seek pleasure and I avoid pain. I seek comfort and I avoid anything that doesn't feel safe. And it happens so subconsciously, I'm not even aware of it. And so I could go about my whole life living from that space, but I'm not an animal. I'm a human with a piece of Hashem inside of me. And so the minute I'm willing to acknowledge that, there's no shame there. I am fundamentally human, and therefore I'm behaving in survival. But I also have a soul, and I really, really, really want to live a richer life where I get to access that.
It's interesting because on the one hand, you're saying that the animal soul is like the fact that we're so human, but then we're saying, no, but we don't want to be an animal, we want to be a human.
We want to be a human with a godly soul, right? The nefesh habahamis is called nefesh habahamis, like literally. You hear the root word there. It's
an animal.
behema. It's an animal soul.
Animal.
It's a survival instinct. It's not bad. It's not evil. Its instinct is survival, but it's also so limited. It has tunnel vision. It sees a problem and it quickly seeks to solve it. It feels discomfort, and this operating system comes on board and quickly takes me out of discomfort. So if I walk into a room and I see 3 of my friends huddling, and that immediately makes me feel uncomfortable, like, oh my God, they didn't even tell me they were going to be here. What's my survival instinct? How's it going to drive me now? Now, everybody operates differently. Some people have this go over and abrasively say, guys, I cannot believe you're here. Why don't you tell me? Some people shrink and go outside of the room and say, I don't want them to know I'm here. That would be so, whatever the word is, that would be so embarrassing. Right? So everyone has a different, right? But what's if I know that I'm not just an animal seeking survival, and I take a moment and I hold the pain that just came up. And then I say, but I have a truth, and I know that my worthiness does not shrink in somebody else's from someone else's rejection. My value does not become less because my friend is absent to me right now. I'm worthy, I'm lovable, and now I can walk into the room and just be me. That's me acting for my truth. That's me when I'm in a healed enough space to not let the survival instincts drive.
Mm-hmm. To get to that place, we have to
be willing to acknowledge that we're in survival. We have to be willing to acknowledge. Like there's no shame. Like this is what the Tanya outlines, this process. This is your humanness. This is how it acts. This is how it behaves. This is why it behaves the way it behaves. It's all spelled out. And so much of the recipe, the ingredients towards healing that is compassion for the truth of you that's hiding underneath all of those survival instincts. And there's a therapeutic process for that. It's not just theories. It's not just ideas. It's good to know. You and I having this conversation will hopefully plant seeds of knowing for people. But it requires a little bit of handholding, a little bit of guidance. There's a therapeutic process to move us through this.
To go from a state of like fear and this animal soul consciousness to knowing who you really are and connecting to your godly
Fear,
self.
yeah. Think of all the words: fear, anxiety, fear of
Mhm.
rejection, fear of failure, jealousy, resentment. Um, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm never going to be good at this. Something is a little bit, something's wrong with me. Those are all narratives that our survival instincts spin to help us try to keep up and do better. Don't sit, it doesn't want us to be in a state of discomfort. Some people have, like, take social anxiety, for example, like, we build this narrative, like, that's just me. I'm socially anxious. I don't like going to parties. Is that
Yeah.
your truth? Or are you so afraid of the rejection that might happen when you sit down and people continue to talk to each other and don't pay attention to you? Is that true, or are you so afraid of people putting a spotlight on you and you don't really know yourself, and so you're afraid of, am I going to say the right thing? How am I going to be perceived? What are they going to think of me?
And this is a funny question.
Go ahead.
When I hear that, and especially when I take myself back to those first years where I left home and that what you're describing my brain, the question is like, are there people who don't think that way? Like who actually don't operate like that?
That's a great question. So I will tell you from my own experience and just working with clients and having so many real conversations with real women, we all at our at these, at the core, so we're so the same. We're all the same. There's some people who have healthier, secure sense of self. There's no question. I mean, I have seven sisters. I have six of us. Me, I'm on the
Wow.
seventh. So we're all so different. We all operate differently. We all show up in the world a little bit differently. So there you go. You got a range of seven people raised by the same parents, and yet life and affected us differently. The beliefs we internalize about ourselves affected us differently. Our soul came into the world with a different purpose and a different challenge and a different thing to overcome and a different little portion in the world to transform differently than the other. But at I would say, like, I would love to bring all my clients into the room together and be like, you guys are all exactly the same. Some people don't want to hear that. Some people like to think of themselves as unique.
Yeah.
But most often people do, there is some kind of comfort in knowing that there's nothing wrong with me. This is so human. We all have very similar wounding. It's like a template by which we operate and engage with life. And it could all be healed so that we are an expression of our higher consciousness and not operating from our survival instincts. So bringing people together and everyone, even removing that shame of something is wrong with me. What is wrong with me? Why is it that I always feel so self-conscious around other people? Why is it that when it's such an effort for me to show up because I have to work so hard to be perceived a certain way? Even just bringing everyone together and everyone hearing, like, you're all struggling with this. Let's take our masks off. Let's take the pretenses off. We're all just beautiful, beautiful. You're all like just beautiful girls working through the same stuff. And it's okay. You are loved. You are worthy. Like that's step number one, to have that realization that there is nothing wrong with you and there is nothing shameful about all the doubts that run through your mind. I think that is the beginning, the very first step of knowing there's nothing shameful or flawed about you. And then step number two would be the permission to feel. Permission to feel. Healing to me equals feeling. The permission to feel, this recognition that I have a human side. Healing equals feeling. Permission to feel. Actually, like I would love to actually, like move in on this, because I do think growing up with so many different, Jewish notions of like serve Hashem with joy, or think positive and it's going to be good, or there a lot of emphasis being put on like staying positive and having a
Yeah.
gratitude mindset and all that. Those are all 100% correct, but unfortunately they dismiss the pain. The pain shows up. I walk into the room. I see three of my friends, again, we'll use that example, talking with each other, and I had no idea they were going to be here. And I feel so excluded. I feel so dismissed. I feel hurt. If I'm going to jump into think good and it's going to be good, I'm bypassing the pain, and it's going to come back and scream in the next experience, in the next circumstance. It's going to keep coming back, and it's going to hurt every single time, and it's going to hurt so badly, okay? So the healing experience is I'm giving myself permission to feel that pain that came up. Now, it's not me. I am not a victim of these circumstances. The 19, 20, 23, however old, this adult me, noticing, again, a childhood wound that was re-triggered and holding it and realizing, wow, that little girl inside of me was just hurt again because her friends looked in the other direction. And that's usually when we have this extreme pain, it is a trigger of something that happened in our early developmental years. It's, I remember reading a saying like, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Right? Like, so if it's like, why are you in so much pain? Why'd this put you in the worst mood? So three of your friends went out without telling you. Like, why are you making such a big deal about it? That's typically this shaming voice comes in and is like, stop being such a baby. Stop making such a big deal. What's if we have permission to acknowledge that for this little inner 2-year-old, it's a big deal. It was the same experience, or let's say the 4-year-old who moves to a new city and goes to a brand new kindergarten, and nobody on the playground plays with her, and nobody's there to help her, to hold her and sit next to her and say, it's so lonely. It's so lonely when you move to somewhere new and nobody plays with you. Nobody helps her process that. So she internalizes that pain, and she internalizes the belief that, I guess I'm just not so lovable. That must be why they don't play with me. And then 15 years later, she goes away, or 10 years later, she goes away to high school and has a similar experience, or she perceives it as similar. It's just 4 girls are hanging out. They know each other from years already. So it makes sense that they feel that immediate connection. I'm brand new. They don't connect, but the belief that I took on as a 4-year-old that I must not be so lovable. I'm not good at socializing. That belief comes in fiercely, and literally it's a traumatic experience, gets re-triggered, and the pain it feels excruciating. And again, there's no one there to process it. It just festers and festers. And I'm a big girl, so I put it away and I pretend it's not happening. I'm not going to be a baby. I need to be resilient. I'm having a new experience. Is what I'm saying making sense to you, Esther? So this is what goes on with us time after time after time. And so when I say healing is feeling, it's giving permission to just process out that grief, process out that pain that you had as a 4-year-old. There's nothing shameful. It's a re-triggered experience. And if that could be held and processed, and sometimes we need someone to hold it with us. Sometimes we don't have the ability to hold it. We just become it. I'm just flooded in pain. And I'll use a term that many of your listeners who study Tanya, I'm sure, have heard. There's a term where the Alter Rebbe uses when this kind of a feeling, let's say resentment or jealousy shows up and it's fierce. And the Alter Rebbe says, push it away with 2 hands. Now, the way I learned this as a kid was that, stop being pathetic. You're not allowed to be jealous. Don't be jealous. Push it away with 2 hands. My understanding today in this therapeutic process is this realization of there's nothing wrong with me. This isn't me. This is a little part that just got triggered. Is a part of the therapeutic process where I unblend from this intense emotion so that I can hold it and it doesn't become me. That is a story of my survival instinct, of my survival template, of the way that I've internalized beliefs about myself, about life, about others. And that's driving me now, and it's flooding me, and I'm so immersed. I'm in so much pain because of it. So step number 1 is externalize it and realize it's a part of me that's having an intense, triggered reaction. It's not me. I am my truth. I am my godly soul, which, like I said, does not shrink in value because somebody else rejected me. It does not shrink in value because I'm not able to, socialize as easily when I show up in a new place. I'm still worthy. I'm still whole. I'm still beautiful. This triggered part just needs feeling. It's permission to feel, to acknowledge. It makes sense that there's a part of me that's in so much pain.
Wow. When I left home, I actively, I know this now because on reflection, I actively avoided the feeling. I was petrified. I was 15. And I know that, like, I didn't cry for a few years. Like, I literally didn't cry. Even if I
Yeah.
just didn't, I was too afraid that if I would let myself be open to these scary things, to even being just afraid, as you were saying, it would become me. Like, I would become,
Yeah. That's a very common fear. And I see it in adults. I see it in 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds. This is still a common fear that people have, that if I go there, I'll never stop. I remember speaking to a grown woman about this, and I said, that it's okay to grieve that experience that was so painful. And she says, no, I can't grieve it. If I start, I'll never stop. And that, or hearing her say that, gave me this clarity of like, she doesn't know her soul's power, first of all. She doesn't know that her heart has the capacity to hold two opposite feelings at once, right? There's a saying, I think, I don't know the source exactly, but it's a story with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, where he was grieving the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, but at the same time elated about having learned these new things. And it says that joy is anchored on one side of the heart and grief is anchored on the other. And I remember when I learned that again in this age and stage of my life, I was like, show me a human who walks around like that. And show me a human who's able to grieve and be joyous at the same time so that I could understand what that meant. And then I realized it's not a present experience. It's an assurance that our heart has the capacity for both. But if we're so afraid of ever allowing grief and pain to be experienced, we're never going to be able to have the other side. It's either both or none. You can't turn off one side of your heart. The heart has one switch button. So permission to feel means I know the capacity of my heart. I'm not afraid. Alone, when we're alone, it feels very fearful. We need to acknowledge that. It feels very fearful. And that's why we need help. We need adults in our life. We need mentors. We need friends. We need a therapist. We need others who can help mirror this to us. Because if I go into that pain alone, it might feel like I'm going to drown there. Once we have somebody who can mirror to us, like, you're going to be okay. I can hold this with you. You have the capacity, and your soul has the capacity to hold this. Your heart has the capacity to hold this. Once we learn that, then it becomes less scary. But for a 15-year-old who goes away from home and is so afraid of crying, that makes so much sense. So again, I hope we're planting a seed here that, like, if we're held in a compassionate holding, it's doable. We're allowed to cry. There's nothing shameful or there's nothing weak about it. It means that you're human.
makes so much sense that compassion, you were saying, is the first step. Because if you are hard, if you think that you're bad or that there's something wrong, then you're not going to open up to anyone about it. And so you're not going to have that opportunity to be held.
And so let me point this out to notice, because this is going to happen in people all the time. So I want them to be aware of what's happening. A pained part shows up and it's a lot. It's too much. So another part comes into our system to protect us from that pain. And one part could be like, stop, don't do this. You need to stay resilient. You're away from home. Stay strong. It's going to just pull you down if you get into this mood. Another part might come in and be like, yeah, seriously, don't start crying, because if you do, you'll never stop. And like, it's honestly, it's pathetic. Look at those other girls. They're managing fine. Like, what is wrong with you? Just shut it down. Stop. So I want people to realize these are all different parts of our animal instinct, of our survival instinct, of our animal soul consciousness. All just a bunch of different voices showing up for one goal. Again, if you notice the key thread here, they're here to help me find comfort and avoid pain. They're here to help me find safety and avoid situations that feel unsafe. That's all their goal is. They just don't want me to experience pain and discomfort. In comes the higher consciousness, the soul, and says, hey, I'm not afraid of what's going on. I'm not afraid. Let me hold this with you. You're going to be okay. It makes sense that you're feeling pain. You're away from home. It makes sense that it feels so intense, that triggered a past experience. This all makes so much sense. Let me hold it with you. It's okay to cry. Again, I'm obviously sharing a very ideal image where a girl's able to do this for herself, but I'm painting a picture of what is possible if we give ourselves permission to feel. And if you don't feel internally that you have that permission, then it's a good knowing that let me go get help. Let me go find an adult who I can sense their compassion and they can hold this with me. Or they can guide me to a good therapist who could hold this with me. Because so many parents, unfortunately, a lot of mothers, their daughter's fears trigger their own unresolved stuff. Their daughter's anxiousness trigger their own unresolved anxiousness. And so it's true, their mothers aren't safe for them. They go cry to their mother and it just, and so many daughters just want to protect their mother. I don't want my mother to feel that pain. And this is part of our survival instinct that we form when we're 1 or 2 years old. I need my mother to just be calm. I don't want her to be afraid. Let me not tell her that I even have needs. That's a very, very common thing. Very, very common human instinct.
For the child to protect the parent.
Yeah, for the child to protect the parent. Because it's safer. Why do we do that? Not because I'm worried about my mother. For me, if my mother's less anxious, I'm safer. And I notice that every time I cry, she gets more anxious. So a 2-year-old internalizes a belief that if my needs are clearly very burdensome, let me quiet down my needs. Let me pretend I don't even have needs. My needs are so shameful because they trigger so much angst in my mother. And that becomes our template.
Wow, we're very wise as little children.
We are our Nefesh Habamis is brilliant, sophisticated, and clever. But it's so narrow-minded. So narrow-minded. It literally has like tunnel vision. Something's unsafe, let me find safety. That's it. That's its only, in a very sophisticated way. But then it shows up later. The same seminary girl who's away and feeling a lot of pain doesn't want to burden her mother with that.
Right.
And not only does she not want to burden her mother, it's harder even. She feels shame that she feels pain. Again, literally mirroring that 2-year-old experience, right? And so when you feel shame that you feel pain, it just exasperates the pain.
I hear that a lot from girls. They say, my parents spent so much money for me to be here. I can't complain to them now.
Yeah. So again, just bringing awareness in front of us. You had one of the things you had asked me about was like the difference. I'll segue into it. You said something about like a tzaddik and a Rasha, and I want to bring the Beinuni in because that's a really important, from the lens of the Tanya. That's our goal. The Rasha doesn't have awareness of what's driving them. The Rasha has no idea that how their subconscious is playing out behind like all these fears, these anxiousness, these worries, these fears, like the example I just gave of a girl who cannot share her pain with her mother because she doesn't want to burden her mother. Because when she burdens her mother becomes anxious. And that's so unsafe for a daughter to see her mother in an anxious state. So already from a young age, she has this template of her survival instinct says, my needs are burdensome. There must be something shameful about them. Right? So now, if I don't know that's what's happening for me, I just shut down. And now that's like the Rasha state. I don't have choice. I want to cry to my mother, but I can't cry to her because subconsciously I have messages that are saying, don't cry. And that's the Rasha state. And chas v'shalom, I'm not calling any girl like this a Rasha. I'm saying the Rasha state is when subconsciously we are being driven by our patterns, by our survival instinct patterns, and we have no awareness of it. And we just think, oh, that's me. Or I just don't have that kind of relationship. My mother isn't, or I don't have pain. We could tell ourselves a story. I don't have pain, but subconsciously it shows up because we're not able to show up fully. We're not able to engage with our friends fully. We're not able to be our best selves because there's this fear of being fully seen, because then someone's going to find out that I actually do have pain. The Beinuni is when we can bring all that awareness in front of our eyes, and now I have a choice. I realize that the reason I'm not able to cry is because my needs, I told myself a story that my needs were burdensome. I'm allowed to cry. I can choose. Now, again, I'm using psychological language to define this, but from a Jewish lens, from a Jewish perspective, it's the same thing. The Rasha doesn't even know how badly he wants to connect with Hashem. He's completely blinded. He's driven by, I just need more money. I need a bigger house. I need more validation. I need more things. I need more fame. I need more. And meanwhile, those are survival instincts because that's the way he's going to feel better about himself. The Beinuni goes, ooh, I realize how desperately I want to keep up with the Jones. I realize that I'm willing to risk my integrity to make more money. Now I have a choice. Do I want to risk my integrity, or is the money and the way I'm perceived by my neighbors more important? Now I have a choice. But without the choice, there's no awareness even. I'm just being driven by my need for validation, my need for being greater than, my need for being important, my need for more money, more fame, more things, more whatever. Everybody has a different driver. The exact same thing is playing out psychologically for us. And the reason why I feel it's okay to use Beinuni Rasha terms here is because it's blocking me from being in alignment with Hashem. It's blocking me from being in alignment with my truth.
So that awareness is what switches us from one state to another, just like watching it play out.
The choice, no. So the awareness isn't what switches us, but the awareness is what now gives me the ability to choose.
Okay.
The Beinuni has the capacity to choose, even if internally there's still a lot of angst and there's still an internal battle of, again, like I said before, integrity or having a bigger, more money, integrity or more money. There's still a battle, but my machshava dibur maisa, I still have control over the way I act on this and the way I speak about this and the thought patterns that I'm going to allow myself to have about this.
Mm-hmm.
I have control over that. When I don't even realize that this is what's driving me, it's behind the car, it's driving me. I don't even see it clearly. I'm just so compelled. I'm so driven to follow my survival instincts.
So somebody's feeling jealous, let's say, which I think is a common one, and I think we shame jealousy a lot. I definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's one of those things I wish would just go away. Um,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
so you're feeling jealous, and then you're aware. Okay, I'm feeling jealous. I'm aware that this is a feeling of jealousy, and like, um, what then switch? What's the choice to stop feeling jealous?
Okay, so let's try to come up with an example. I'm noticing two of my friends make summer plans together. I am not brought into this conversation. I'm not included. So a feeling of intense jealousy shows up. If I'm not aware of that feeling coming up, I suddenly start spinning a story of, oh, well, they're so this and they're so that and they're so this and anyway they're so that. I suddenly make it about them. I feel internal discomfort and it's so uncomfortable I can't be with it. So immediately becomes a blame story. I tell stories about them.
Mm-hmm.
There's right,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the Russia state. I just made it about them. Now I'm demonizing them. They're so this and they're so that and they're so thoughtless and they're so selfish and that. Meanwhile, if I could just make an about face and go inward and go, what just got triggered? Oh, I'm feeling so left out. I'm feeling so jealous that I wasn't included. I'm feeling jealous of their friendship. They seem to get along so easily. They don't have to try so hard with each other. There isn't this, every girl can think to herself of how this plays out for her. When I'm aware of what's happening for me, now I have a choice of my machshava dibar maisa about them. Am I going to still go tell stories about them and turn them into demons? Or am I going to acknowledge, no, I was feeling hurt by them? It could be that some of the things they said and did was out of alignment. It could be they were in survival and not saying the right things, but there's nothing fundamentally flawed about them because I had this intense jealous reaction. So I'm not going to act on it. I'm not going to try to undermine their summer plans. I'm not going to speak about it and demonize them. I could speak about my intense jealous feelings. I could say I felt so hurt when I was left out. This is about me. This isn't Lashon Hara. This is not about them. They're so selfish and they're so thoughtless and they're so. I have choice now around this. But when there wasn't an awareness, when I am not aware of all the parts playing out inside of me, that's where I fall into that Russia state where I suddenly, it's like I'm externalizing this, I'm making it about them, I'm turning them into the devil. And so becoming aware, becoming aware of all the parts playing out in us, this is also, again, part of that healing process.
You could still be in in alignment and be in a Beinuni state and feel jealous.
Yeah, thought, speech, and action. So when if I have a feeling of jealousy come up, it's a moment to turn inward and goes, what was just triggered? What's not okay? Do I have to be working on my social things better? Maybe I have to learn how to have more honest conversations. Maybe I'm not vulnerable enough, and people always think that I'm putting on a show. Maybe maybe I have fear around that, and I have to work through that with a therapist. Maybe what is it that's coming up for me? How can this be a a catalyst for internal growth, for elevating a part of my nefesh habahamis from this experience? So jealousy there was like an amazing teacher. Don't repress the jealousy and be like, no, 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 no. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with them. The Beinoni has that introspection. And he goes, something came up for me. What is it? What just got triggered? Jealousy is a teacher. Jealousy is a teacher. When it turns into thought, speech, and action, then I've just slipped into Russia's, then I lost control. I lost control of my thought, speech, and action. And I could repair that, by the way. We're constantly slipping in and out and in and out and in and out. And we even have those tzaddik moments where we are just fully aligned, thought, speech, and action, fully aligned with our internal knowing. No battle, just absolute alignment with my truth.
You spoke about this concept, you mentioned to me off of the recording, of this idea of a mother wound. And I was wondering if this is something that makes sense to bring up now, first of all.
It does, so something, I'll tell you what triggered that thought for me. You had asked about common Hasidic concepts or Torah concepts that are relevant in real life. And so what I was thinking, I was like, well, first of all, I had like 1,000,001 things that I would, yes, every single Hasidic concept is about real life. It's not like this, we weren't handed this philosophical Torah. And, like, here's life, go about and do your life. And in your spare time, sit down and study ideas. Every single thing that the Alter Rebbe, starting with the Baal Shem Tov, and actually this is what I wanted to share is straight from the Baal Shem Tov, is all about our day-to-day life. So the thought that I had was talking about Hashgacha Pratis, which, that's like everybody knows about Hashgacha Pratis. We all talk about Hashgacha Pratis. But if we could internalize that knowing that every single blade of grass only moves when God, divine design, when it's destined to recognize and realize that every single part of our lives is being guided and handheld. And I wanted to speak specifically to the idea of what the Baal Shem Tov spoke about, how, life is like a mirror for us. That, your fellow is a mirror. When you look at your friend's face and it's clean, then you know that you're flawless. But if you see a blemish, it's speaking to a blemish internally. I remember learning this idea as a kid and not really understanding. It was like, what do you mean? I see somebody being mean. It doesn't mean I'm mean. Or I see somebody being, saying not nice things. I never say that. I'm not like... What the Alter Rebbe was telling us, which is like such a critical, fundamental thing in emotional growth, in self-growth, in spiritual growth, which is all one and the same, that when you see something outside of you and oh, I see an issue, let me see what I can do to fix this. Let me tell an adult, let me go over to that friend and see what she needs from me. If I notice it inside of me, let me go, work through this. That's great. You looked in the mirror, my face is clean, and therefore nothing was triggered. When you are triggered, when it activates a part that feels pain, jealousy, resentment, grief, it just means, oh, what did it come here to teach me? It did not come here to talk about that my friends are so awful because they didn't include me in their summer plans. It mirrored for me that there's some unresolved pain in here that I need to work through. And what I was thinking about was that, even we see this is very much part of like any kind of marriage therapy, or I shouldn't say any kind, but like the very, the ones today, there's very much about like recognizing each partner's attachment styles. From a young age, we develop a certain attachment style. And when couples can become aware of their attachment styles and how they're interacting with each other through the lens of their attachment style, half the problem is solved. We now become aware every time one of us triggers the other. I realize, oh, that's my avoidant, that's his anxiousness. How are they triggering each other? And I believe, I see this as well in female relationships, in many friendships. It would be worthy for people to start beginning to notice their relational styles, the way that they are, because, I could be in high school and I could be struggling with this, and I might have this thought that, I'll go away to seminary, I'm going to start fresh, and I'll have a new friends and a new thing, and I won't have to deal with this. And then from seminary, it goes to post-seminary. We go through the same thing. We're like, oh, this is hard. This is challenging. I keep bumping into this. Next year, it's going to be all new. Like, I'm going to change Mashana Maka, Mashana Mazel. Like, I'll change my place. My luck will change with me. And then we're so sure that, when we get married, we'll find the right person, we'll fall in love, and then I won't have to ever deal with this again. Unfortunately, or actually I should say fortunately, we have so much more power than that. We don't have to keep changing our circumstance. We have to go inward and notice what's a pattern that I notice. I have this anxious feeling in my friendships. I find a friend, she becomes my closest friend, and then I love her so deeply, and I feel such a deep connection with her. And then she goes and leaves for a week, and suddenly I see her talking to another friend, and I feel this terrible pain and something. So what is wrong with me? Okay, fine, there's something wrong with her. And then my mind, to make me feel safer in that pain, starts telling me all the things that are wrong with her, because that makes me feel a little bit better about myself. It's not me. I'm not rejected. She's just not a good person. And then we do this again, and then we do this again, and we do this again. Everybody who's listening will probably recognize that there's certain relational patterns, that they have similar kind of ways. That's what I'm describing to you as an anxious attachment style. There's also an avoidant attachment style where I don't get too close, because as a child, my caregivers were not emotionally available to me. And so if I tried to reach out, there was too much pain in that rejection. And so I just developed a coping mechanism, a safety, a survival mechanism of like, just stay emotionally disconnected. It's so much safer. If you never get too close when you go away for high school, you won't miss those friends so much. And then you go away to seminary and like there's somebody who you like and you get along so well, but let me wall myself up a little bit, because if I get too close and then they turn in the other direction and they start being much closer to, the other girl in the other room, it will feel too painful. So I just develop an avoidance style in my relationships. Some of us do a little bit of both, a little bit of avoidance, a little bit of anxiousness. But what I want to encourage girls is to notice those patterns, because we can start working through them. Again, so much of what I just said, people are doing very, very subconsciously. I was not aware of this behavior inside of me until years and years and years later. So again, I'm just planting seeds here for us to become familiar with our patterns. It's not about changing the circumstance. It's not about changing the friend. And it's not either about turning the friend into the devil because she keeps hurting me. She's not doing anything wrong. She's just being her. I'm just being me. But my anxious attachment style puts so much weight on our relationship that when she doesn't respond to my text for 2 hours, the pain and the fear and the worry that maybe she doesn't love me anymore, maybe I'm just too much. Am I too much? It's a lot. It's a lot to hold. So become aware of these patterns, because these patterns could be healed. And what I had mentioned to you off the camera was that this, just by Hashgacha Pratis, this morning, somebody had messaged me on Instagram about a relationship that she has with her best friend. And she was talking about how they are very, very close, and they started sharing a bed, and there's something wrong with her, and she's feeling so much discomfort around this, and what is wrong with her, and who could she speak to about it. And I was so glad that this happened this morning, because from my awareness, this happens so often.
Yeah.
We all live in a very, insular, we're only with women. And so the close relationships, the first relationships that we have in that, that kind of intimate setting are with other women. And also when there is this attachment wounding from our young childhood, it's going to show up in our adult relationships, or in our, seminary age relationships. I don't know if you guys call yourselves adults, where you will feel very suddenly this space where a mother's love should have been. But for whatever reason, it wasn't. This doesn't mean anything's wrong with our mother. They didn't do anything wrong. But just by the virtue of the way the kind of emotional engagement they were able to give us, or the kind of emotional engagement they were not able to give us, there leaves a mother wound. And in that space, there's a lack. And then my friend, who's now my best friend, she's the first person who sees me so well and understands me and gets me. She fills that lack, and that is going to automatically, the natural consequence of that is there's going to be deep love and affection that comes from there. And so something suddenly, there's this worry of like, what is wrong? What's wrong with me? Why do I love her so much? Or why do I love her in a way that is also so painful when she isn't attentive or available or present to this relationship? And so I just want girls to know that there's nothing wrong with you. This is all part of becoming familiar with our patterns and recognizing, okay, there's wounding here that needs healing. This doesn't mean that I'm a lesbian because I'm having this relationship with my friend. Is there something that has to be checked in, and do we have to check in and see, like, is this good for us? Is this healthy? Is this a good way for us to be interacting with each other? Is there some kind of an enmeshment that's happening, or even wiring like that's happening here? By this behavior, you do have to look at it and take a closer look and see, should we be doing what we're doing? But also, like, there's no shame here. Just Just go speak about this with somebody who's compassionate, who doesn't put the world, everything into black and white pictures and be like, oh, something's wrong with you. Somebody who has a deep understanding of again, how our survival templates form. And they'll help you realize, like, okay, there's wounding here, there's a lack, there's a void that this friend was filling. Let's help you find a healthier connection with your core so that you don't need her in this way, so that you could just love each other in a healthy way where you're not trying to fill each other's holes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're saying that there's a mother wound that is it almost, or would you say that it's always because there was a lack from the relationship with the mother growing up that would cause this deep need from a friend?
Yeah, yeah. And from my understanding, I don't have any clinical data to back me up. I do have many people who've reached out to me on this exact topic, and I even want to speak. I want to speak to leaders in positions who come across this, and in the girls in high school and seminary. Like, your reaction and your knowing and your compassionate understanding of what's going to have here is going to shape the way these girls perceive themselves. So if you shame them, they're going to internalize that there's something shameful about them. There's nothing shameful about them. This is like it's part of growing pains. There's a learning process here. There's an opportunity to go inward and go, what's happening? What's being triggered inside of me that's causing this type of relationship to unfold? And it could be held and it could be healed. And it could be acknowledged, at least to acknowledge it and notice, what is it that's coming up for me? So that it doesn't turn into a story of shame and something's wrong with me. And oh my gosh, how am I going to ever get married?
Mm-hmm. It's so comforting for a girl to hear that just because she feels maybe an intense love for a female friend, that doesn't put her into this the way that the world would like to just like, okay, now you're this.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that's intense needs to be held and looked at.
Okay.
Intensity is not a sign of health. To love deeply is very healthy. The intensity, though, sounds like a part that is so afraid of losing something. You know what I'm saying? Just
Mm-hmm.
even that alone. And by the way, this shows up in heterosexual relationships also. The intensity is a sign that, what are you afraid it's going to happen? Like, why is there fear here?
That's so interesting.
Why is there fear? The butterflies that we feel in a relationship, the high, this like thrill and excitement in connection, is the flip side of fear of losing that. So healthy love is deep, it's profound, it's there is obviously a little bit of intensity just because it's two humans. There, just that alone creates tension. But intensity needs to be looked at to understand what's going on here.
The word I never noticed this, but the word tense is inside intensity. Like
Tension,
you're like
interesting.
tensed up and you're scared. You're scared of losing. That's so interesting.
I mean, it shows that there's distance. The fact that there's distance creates that drive and that desire, and that is part of healthy love. But when there's fear of loss, of losing this, or when there's intensity, it's worth just going inward and going, what's coming up here? What's being triggered here? Why is this so intense? You can love deeply without it being intense and fearful and anxiety ridden.
Wow. There's the other side of this, which is um, that I've heard this from a lot of like seminary heads that, oh, well, the reason for why maybe these girls are feeling this intense love in this friendship is because in the secular world, you'd already be exposed to men at this age. And because you're not, that's, it's getting kind of just translated onto their friend.
Yeah, so I hear that. And so this is it. This is in our relationships. And like I said, it could show up in either. Okay. It could show up from a friend to a friend, or from a friend to a boyfriend, from a girl to a boyfriend. When we are coming at a relationship from a space of lack, there's a gap here. There's a hole. I don't feel good enough about myself. And when you turn towards me, I feel elated because I get him to look at me and him to smile, and he chose me and he picked me. That's finally validation that I'm worthy and lovable. This happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where there is an anxious attachment. There's constant need for the other to fill. This goes on in marriages all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is where we do need to heal. We need to come at each other from a place of fullness and love and healthy desire. mutual desire, not I'm empty and I need you to fill me. Because if I'm empty and I need you to fill me, that is going to exhaust you. That's going to exhaust the other.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot fill your needs. Nobody can. Nobody can.
Nobody can fill your
This was the started. Nobody can fill your relationship with your own core and your relationship with Hashem. I mean, this could go off on a completely different topic. I can write a thesis on this, and I don't know if we have the time or if this is even an interest to your audience. But the goal in life, or the ultimate goal, is to develop a healthy relationship with our own core, with our own self, with our own knowing, and a relationship with Hashem. Those are the only things that are going to fill us. The Alter Rebbe writes about this all the time, about the soul and when it comes into the world disconnected from God, and how our survival instincts sense the lack and sense the void and try to fill it. Some people fill it with achievements. Some people fill it with things. Some people fill it with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an empty pit. I mean, it's a bottomless pit. It's a bottomless pit that can only ever find perfect safety and comfort in the arms of God and in the arms of my own soul and my own knowing and my own capacity to hold it.
Then, if I don't need anybody, then what will what will motivate those relationships and those deep friendships and eventually marriage?
Because we do need it. We need each other. We need each other. We were wired to need each other. We were wired to desire connection with others. We were wired to reconnect with our soulmate. We were wired for relationships, for friendships, for being connected with our children, with our adults. But if we needed them, if they need to fill a lack and a void, that is a recipe for constant disappointment, feelings of rejection, feelings of resentment, feelings of burnout. So we fill ourselves, and then the other becomes a cherry on the top. The other becomes a joy of living, rather than a constant need. I need you, fill me, pick me, choose me, see me, turn around, look at me.
Mm.
Imagine the difference between eating a good meal and you're full and you just ate exactly how much you needed of a healthy, nutritious meal, and then you have a delicious, sweet dessert, versus you come in and you're starving hungry and you're about to faint because you're so hungry, and somebody serves you a bowl of like meringue, lemon meringue. Like,
I love that analogy. It's the cherry on the top.
so the lemon meringue is delicious after a nutritious meal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like sometimes we do reach out from lack. Sometimes we do reach out from lack and it feels good in the moment, but then it's always met with some kind of a pain afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Parents and children, think about parents and children. If I need my child to fill me, I'm putting a burden on my child. And my child is afraid of ever stepping into their own power because they're always looking back to check, is my mother pleased? Is my mother okay? Did I make her proud? Like, that's just a really easy place to look at it. When I don't need my child, I just love him dearly. I don't need him to fill me. I don't need him to behave in a certain way so that I'm perceived as oh, she's a good mother. She knows how to raise good kids.
Mm-hmm.
If I need that from my child, or I need him because I'm bored and lonely without him, then that's a burden again. But I don't need, but I just love them fiercely. There's no place else I want to be than hanging out with my kids.
That's a big difference.
There's a huge difference. And so it's the same with the spouse, and it's the same with the friends.
How can we not become, in doing this healing work and maybe taking a look at these patterns, become resentful maybe of our parents for the things that...
That's a great question. I'm so glad you brought it up. Our parents, I'm a parent now. There's obviously, I've hurt my children in ways that I, chas v'shalom, would never have attended, but just the mere fact that I am a human and I have my own survival template. And this is why I so passionately encourage people, and when you recognize challenges with your child, don't find your kid a therapist, find you a therapist.
Don't find your therapist, find you a therapist?
You can do both. But more important than finding your child a therapist is finding you a therapist. When parents can start to take ownership and to acknowledge and know and realize, not because we're bad people, but because the nature of our humanness is that we've inflicted this kind of wounding onto others. So we don't, chas v'shalom, this is not about pointing fingers at parents. This is about connecting the dots. Because if I've turned into a story of like, I'm pathetic and unworthy, and then I could help you connect the dots and go, no, it's because your father was never, ever present to you. You are worthy, you're beautiful, you're lovable. But I watched my father run around and pay attention to every single person who would walk into our house and every single person who would walk into our shul. And yet he never gave me that love and attention. So I developed this belief that I'm clearly not lovable. And now I'm encouraging that girl to say, your father was under the influence of his survival template. He needed those people's validation and love, maybe their support even. Maybe he did it for work. That was his way of working the crowd. And he had no idea. He had no idea that, he was doing something wrong. Nobody ever taught him. Nobody ever gave him that awareness. It's a natural instinct that we know, but if we're so, enveloped by our survival instinct, we miss the instinct. The instinct, unfortunately, drowns underneath our survival template. So did I answer that? I want to make sure I answer that fully.
Yeah.
This is not about blaming. This is about connecting the dots so I could unburden myself of the belief that I'm not lovable.
But some people, I think, feel unburdened by blaming. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
That does, I hear what you're saying. Like, it's like, oh, this is their fault. But unfortunately, that victim mentality, the goal isn't here to become a victim. The goal is to now be empowered to reparent those parts. So if I I'll give you an analogy that I often use when, like sometimes, people will go into a rage about something and angry and angry and angry and angry. That rage needs to be heard. And I can hold it with them for a while and I can let that part express itself. What I often like to point out at some point is imagine that you are sitting now. I don't know how this works for your audience because they don't have their own kid, but let's say they're babysitting their younger brother, okay? You're sitting on the couch, you're reading a book, your younger brother's playing, and he's building a thing of blocks. Beautiful, this little 2.5-year adorable little boy building his blocks. A cousin runs in and just knocks it over, grabs the top piece, bongs your kid, the 2.5-year-old on the head and runs out. He's playing, he's fun, they're in the middle, he's just, an instinct that a lot of people have is to run after the 7-year-old, yell at him, and don't you dare, and then go over to the mother and say, why did you let your kid do that? And look what he did and all that. And meanwhile, there's a 2.5-year-old sitting on the floor crying. He's sitting there crying. And I'm so busy yelling at the other kid. What a parent is supposed to do, what a babysitter is supposed to do, what an older sister is supposed to do. Forget the cousin right now. We'll deal with that later. Let me hold you. I'm so sorry that just happened. That was so shocking. You were playing so nicely. It was so unfair that he came and did that. And soothe them and calm them. And then let me go figure out how to make sure that cousin doesn't come here and bully you again. In our own lives, this happens. We rage. We're so busy raging on what the father did and what the mother did and there is a part that needs that to move. We have to move through the anger to get to the grief that's underneath there. It's a process. It's a process. But let's not forget. Let's not spend so much time as the victim of that person's, whatever it is. Can we acknowledge what's happening in here? There's a little part in you that's holding so much grief and so much pain. And it's very uncomfortable to be with grief and pain. It's so much easier to rage about the perpetrator and what they did that we never go in here. So let's go inside and hold these parts that are feeling so much of life felt so unfair because of their behavior. And it made me feel worthless, and it made me feel unloved, and it made me have such a low sense of self-worth, and it made me question my own knowings, and it made there's a list and list and list of the grief and pain that's being held in here. And that is what needs the most acknowledgement.
And you can have would you say that, I mean, unless there's obviously like maybe extreme abuse or things, that even if you see all these patterns, that you can still have a loving, whole, healthy relationship with your parents?
I believe that absolutely yes, when you're willing and ready to have these conversations, and an authentic relationship, and just, you don't have to, I'm not blaming you. I'm not here to blame you. You want to know my experience? I can share my experience. If it doesn't matter for me to share that, I don't have to. Like, I think it's going to depend on each person on their own, like what they feel. When I feel fully whole and safe here, here's the magical thing that happens. And all the steps that I mentioned can't be bypassed. You can't get here without working through all those other steps. The magical thing that happens is the pained parts of our animal conscious, our animal soul consciousness, They're held, they're witnessed, they're processed, and we begin seeing life through the lens of our higher consciousness. And in that space, it's not about a mother and it's not about somebody who hurt me. It's you begin to see the world through the lens of this is what Hashem planned. This was part of my soul's journey. These were the experiences that came to lift me up, to help me find my core, to help me find my truth. Until we get there, it's a painful process, but it all happens in the being of just giving ourselves permission to feel, holding those parts of the pain and the grief, and eventually this is where you get. You don't need another person's validation or recognition around this. We feel so safe holding our own story that it doesn't matter where they're up to their own process, they're up to their own story, they'll get here when they get here. But it's no longer about this part needing apology from this person's part. It's about me and my soul. I can be with this, I can hold this. I see this from God's, literally from God's perspective, from the soul's perspective, which is a chelak elokami mamash. So when you see something from the soul's perspective, it's all the details they're not even part of it anymore. They kind of dissolve into Hashem's truth. It's a long, long way to get there for so many people, and I don't want to chas v'shalom undermine the long process that it takes for many people to come here. But I do want to offer that, like, the goal isn't to stay in the rumination or the pain or the grief or the anger. Like, eventually, if we follow those other steps that I pointed out, we begin to see through those lenses. Because that's our truth. Those lenses is the truth. The other parts are the narratives of the survival instinct and why I had to behave a certain way and why I felt a certain way. But they're not truth.
So they
They're a narrative.
don't have so much hold on you when you see them for what they are.
They're real. They're very, very real, but they're not. They're the perspective of the human experience. And we all have a soul which sees a completely different story.
Wow. I wonder if it's this idea that they say about the Baal Tshuva that he can reach a place higher than the tzaddik because of the distance. It's like when you get to a place you can look back, and maybe that can help also with the parents. Like, I couldn't have gotten to the state here of living with my truth if I hadn't had this hurt and had these unmet needs.
100%. That is exactly what it means about the Baal Tshuva, at least in my understanding.
Wow.
That those experiences were the catalyst for me going inward and healing my nefesh habamis, elevating, uplifting. The nefesh habamis is a very critical part of life. Like, it's all our resources. Remember earlier we called it clever and brilliant and sophisticated?
Yeah.
It is clever, brilliant, sophisticated. Could you imagine harnessing all of those things now for the expression of my truth rather than survival instinct, safety, comfort, avoid pain? It's so busy helping me survive. And now I can, when I unburden it from the beliefs it has taken on, I can now harness it.
Wow.
And that's power. That's hishabcha.
Wow. It's powerful. Is there anything that we didn't address that you wanted to speak about? Or anything that I didn't bring up that I should have?
I don't remember. I feel like I was just came here willing to go wherever you wanted to go.
Well, there's quite a few things that, like, I heard you speak about in other podcasts that I really got excited about, but I think that each one is like a whole
It'll take us another hour on
yeah.
each.
I'll bring this one up because I really liked it when you used the term functional dysfunction. Somebody asked you, like, is this healing work you're talking about only for somebody who's going through like really deep, big stuff, or is this relevant for your average person? Which really this podcast is for. It's for everybody, but I wanted to speak to the average young woman who's leaving home, and then you brought up this term functional dysfunction. So
Yeah, I like that. I don't think I coined that. I think I heard that somewhere and I like right away grabbed it and it resonated with me.
yeah,
Here's the thing for everyone, every human, unless maybe they're born a tzaddik already. We all have a survival template. And what it is it's all of our experiences that felt uncomfortable, that felt unsafe, that felt painful, that felt full of grief, trauma, whatever it is. And then we build tools to avoid having to be with that because it's so uncomfortable. So we hide it here, and then we develop a bunch of different mechanisms of staying away from that pain. I gave you that example of social anxiety before as a perfect one. If I was rejected, that feeling was so painful. So I said, I'm putting it away and I'm never going to let that part of me feel pain again. And I developed mechanisms of how to avoid social interactions, of how to avoid certain kinds of people. If I'm afraid of getting a stage fright, like once I felt, I felt rejected for my message. And so I'm like, no, I'll never do that again. And now I have a fear when I stand up in front of a class to answer my question. It's and so I'm just like, no, I do whatever I could. I don't want to make eye contact with the teacher so she doesn't pick me. So we develop brilliant tools to just we hide these parts of us under here in the downstairs in the basement of my house, and I build complete structures above it to ever avoid having to be with that. I become very functional, even though there's a lot of pain and dysfunction boiling underneath the surface. We can go about our whole lives putting on all these masks to avoid being here, or we could say, you know what, I'm not afraid. I know I heard on a podcast that I have the capacity to be with this, and I'm going to go find an adult who can help me, and I'm willing to open the doors of that basement and go down the stairs and check in. Or I don't even have to go down. I can invite it up. It's bright and light up here. I can invite it up to come sit on the couch. And with the other loving adult next to me, I could say, this happened to me when I was 3 years old. And it was so scary and it was so painful. And I really just want to process it out of me so I don't have to be functional under the broiling dysfunction that's underneath here. And sometimes we have an awareness of it, sometimes we don't. And we develop the functional coping mechanisms in a very subconscious, we're not even aware. We're not even aware that this is our behavior. It just, life shaped me that way. And we think, there's a gorgeous story that we're coming up now, Chodesh Elul soon. That story, gosh, I don't even know the details, but the story of the prince who the king sent him away and gave him all the money and gave him all the resources and gave him all the advisors to go on the journey with him. And slowly but surely, he, uses up all the money, he burns the connections, and he's on his own. And he's away for so long he forgets his language. And there's nothing familiar. And he comes back to the king and he wants to go to the king and nobody lets him in. They're like, we don't know who you are. This is such a profound mashal. It's a story of our lives. We forget who we are. We develop a story. We develop a story about ourselves and we call ourselves, but I'm just like that. Or I can't do that. It's not me. It's not like me. And inside there's a little girl that just wishes she could express herself. And that's why there's pain, because there's this dissonance. There's a part of me that's saying, nah, I don't want to go. And there's another part of me that would love to be a participant and would love to try that new experience and would love to, show up the way I see my friends so easily show up. And so I create function over that pain and that internal dysfunction. I figure out a way to do it in a safe way. But there's a part of me that's been exiled, literally a part of my neshama, a part of my soul that's hiding. It's literally been exiled. Like that is the Shekhinah in Galus inside of us. And it doesn't have the capacity to express itself. And so we know the story back to the mashal where the boy comes home and he just cries out like from this guttural pre-verbal space of like just, and his father recognizes his voice. So God always, 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 Hashem always knows us. He always recognizes us. He knows exactly who we are, despite all the masks and the pretenses and the personalities that we picked up. The goal of tshuva is for me to get to know that part again. This isn't my truth. I have a deep, deep truth inside of me, but it takes a lot of courage. I have to be willing to bring it upstairs from the basement and sit with it and just, I don't have, once it's unburdened, once it's healed, I don't need to do anything to mask it. I no longer need to develop mechanisms to avoid that because the pain has been processed. It's been held. And I'm not afraid of it. Even now I know that even if it shows up occasionally, I know how to hold it. I can call a friend or again, another loving adult or a therapist and they can hold it with me. But I don't have to develop a functional, quote unquote, lifestyle on top of that just to hide it and keep it down. We could just be functionally functional.
Functional, yeah.
Yeah, and like again, just to go back to where we started of like, there's no shame in this process. There's no shame that we have these parts hiding in. Like the Alter Rebbe talks about this. Like we all have this piece of us hiding underneath all of our coping mechanisms. Pieces of us under all of our different coping mechanisms. And like this is it. This is why we're here to redeem those parts of us. Literally to redeem the pieces of Hashem. That's it. That's the redemption of the Shekhinah, beginning internally by letting those parts of us emerge.
I think that our Elul is going to look very different now. When you were just actually defined teshuva in a way that it's not just like, that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I end off with a question, which is that if you could go back to the first year that you left home, and with everything that you know now, which is a lot, with all your wisdom, you can share just one thing with that young woman who had just left home, what would it be?
Wow. Probably that I would just tell her to come sit next to me. She's safe. She's okay. And if something's bothering her, she can tell me. There's nothing wrong with the feelings that she's having. There's nothing wrong with her feelings. And she can share them, and I'll sit next to her and listen.
Nothing wrong with your feelings. Yeah. Yeah. I also wish I'd heard that. Nothing wrong with crying. You're not going to cry forever.
There's nothing wrong with any of them, whether it's jealousy, resentment, fear, anxiousness, having needs. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong. Come share them. I'll hold them with you. I love that question. It's a great question.
Thank you. Wow, this has been incredible. Absolutely incredible. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of On Your Own. If you like this episode or think it will be useful to someone else, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I would love to connect with you. If you've got any questions, feedback, or ideas for future episodes, you can email me at onyourownpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week, and in the meantime, happy adulting.